Hi, this is Chris Young, and I'm here with Bill Benko. We're going to walk you through the construction of the assistive technology Ultimate Remote. Complete assembly instructions are available in the tutorial, but we're going to walk you through the process in this video. We will prepare the case by inserting 4 of these brass heat-set inserts for M3 screws. The inserts go in 4 locations on the case. Press the brass insert into the hole in the case, and then, using a hot soldering iron with a special heat-set insert tip, press it into the case. If your soldering iron is too hot, try unplugging it and letting it cool for a minute, and then press the insert into place. To ensure that the insert is flush with the case, press down on it with a piece of metal, like this metal ruler. Repeat the process for the other 3 inserts. Next, we will prepare the power boost board by installing a slide switch and a USB-A connector. We've already clipped off one of the 3 leads of the slide switch. Insert the outer pin into the ground hole and the center pin into the enable hole. Bend the leads over 90 degrees so that the switch is flush with the edge of the board. The board should look like this. Solder the leads on the underneath side of the board and clip off the excess. Next, we will insert the large USB-A connector into the component side of the board. Flip it over and solder it in place. There are 4 small electrical connections that you should solder first, and then 2 large mounting pins. These pins will take a lot of solder to fill the hole. Be careful, the component will be very hot afterwards. Next, prepare 3 wires to connect to the board. 2 red ones for power and a black one for ground. In the tutorial illustrations, we used green for ground, but technically it should be black. The wire should be about 4 inches long. Strip both ends of each wire. Insert them into the underneath side of the board. The first red wire at the bottom goes to the 5-volt line. The black wire goes to the ground pin adjacent to that. The other red wire at the top goes to the USB pin. Flip the board over and solder the wires from the component side. Clip off the excess leads. That completes the power boost assembly. Now we turn to the TFT display. You will need 3 wires, a yellow jumper wire, a black ground wire, and a red power wire. You might want to consider using flexible stranded wire with silicone covering because it's a little easier to use in this situation. You should coat the tip of the stranded wire with solder before starting. Put a drop of solder on the pad where the wire is supposed to go. In this case, it's pin 13, and in the upper right, there's a pad that's labeled light. This controls the backlight on the display. Then reheat the solder on the pad and attach the wire to pin 13 and the other end to the light. The red wire goes to the USB pad just adjacent to the yellow wire on pin 13. The black wire goes on the other side on the ground pin, fourth pin from the right. That completes assembly of the TFT board. Now we're going to solder some header pins onto the Feather M0 BLE. They come in sets of 16, so you'll have to break off 4 of the pins to make a 12-pin header. Insert the pins into a solderless breadboard, and then place the feather over the pins and solder each one. Carefully remove the feather from the solderless breadboard and insert it into the display board. Align the pins carefully and push it firmly into place. These particular sockets are shallow, so it won't go flush, but that's okay. Now we will put together the AT jacks. We want to create a wiring harness that looks like this. The black wire is a ground wire. It connects to the ring terminal on each of the jacks. You'll need a long black wire and 2 short black ones to connect them together. The green, blue, and yellow wires go to the tip terminals. You should use solid core wire because these wires will eventually be plugged into sockets on the TFT board. Now it's time to mount all of the parts in the case. We first attach the TFT display board using M2.5 screws and nuts. We've temporarily removed the feather board so it's easier to reach the nuts. Reinsert the feather board into the TFT display. Now we're going to mount the AT jacks into the holes in the side of the case. Secure each jack with the nut that is provided. Tighten them down with a pair of needle nose pliers. Trim each of the wires from the jacks to an appropriate length. They're going to plug into the TFT board in little sockets next to the feather board. Strip the ends of each of the wires so that it can be plugged in. Start with the signal wire from the furthest jack right and plug it into the A2 pin. Then take the signal wire from the center jack and plug it into A1. It's easier to do it if you use a pair of needle nose pliers to firmly insert the wire into the jack. Finally, the left jack goes into pin A0, and the black wire goes into the ground pin, which is adjacent to those 3. Next, we insert the 2.1 millimeter barrel jack into the receptacle in the 3D printed case. Then we're going to insert the power boost board into its slot. Make sure that the slide switch protrudes through the slot in the side of the case. Verify that the slide switch works properly. Oops, I made a mistake. We should have connected the battery to the power boost first. We had to take the board back out, connect the battery, and put it back in place. We connect the red USB wire from the power boost to the terminal on the barrel jack. Then create a new black wire to solder to the other terminal of the barrel jack. There is a third terminal on the jack alongside of it, but we don't use that one. Next, we insert the infrared board into the case. There's a separate video that shows you how to construct this board. See the tutorial for details. Secure the board in place with a drop of hot glue. This particular board was constructed with two receiver components that we're not going to use or wire up. See the tutorials for details. Take the yellow wire from the IR board and plug it into pin number 12 adjacent to the feather board. The final wiring step is to tie together all of the ground and power wires. There are 4 black ground wires, 2 on the right and 2 on the left. Trim them to an appropriate length and strip them. Put a piece of heat shrink tubing over 2 of them, and then twist all 4 wires together. Solder the wires together, and do the same with the red wires. There's 1 red power wire on the left and 2 red ones on the right. Twist them together and solder them securely. Slide the heat shrink tubing over the joint and shrink it using a heat gun or a lighter. Do the same for the power wires. Slide the tubing over and heat it to shrink it. Finally, we're going to secure the battery in place using hot glue. Don't use permanent glue because at some point you'll want to replace the battery. The battery needs to be placed as close to the AT jacks as possible to make room for the mounting nut that extends from the lid on the other side. This is a 4-prong 1/4-20 T-nut that we're going to secure to the lid. Use a washer and a 1/4-20 screw and tighten it to secure the T-nut into the plastic of the lid. Then back out the screw and remove the washer. Now we will secure the lid to the box. Make sure that all of the wires are tucked neatly inside so that they don't get pinched by the lid. Place the lid over the box and secure it with 4 M3 machine screws. By the way, this screwdriver that Bill is using is really handy. It's available in the Adafruit store. It's a bit expensive, but Bill says it's worth every penny. There is a 3D printed door that slides into this slot and it covers the USB port, but you'll want to leave it out until you've finished programming the device. There is also an optional guard that you can glue around the LEDs to protect them. That completes the basic construction of the device. See the tutorial for how to upload software and customize it for your purposes. Here's a view of the AT jacks, the barrel jack for charging, and the power boost input jack. Here's a view of the power switch and the output port for charging your iPhone or iPad while using the device. Many thanks to Bill Benko of atmakers.org for assembling this device on video for us, and thanks to the folks at Adafruit.com who support the assistive technology community and the development of devices like this. Visit learn.adafruit.com for more details.